Prior to the release of episode Intermission, the DLC featuring Yuffie for Final Fantasy VII Remake, there were a lot of red flags. First of all was the $30 Australian asking price for anyone who wants to buy the DLC separately. Mind you, that's the same price as the Old Hunters DLC for Bloodborne and the Blood and Wine expansion for The Witcher 3. So it's already a steep asking price, and on top of that, that's almost half of what I paid for the base game when it had come out. Secondly is that this is stupidly a PS5 exclusive piece of content. It's exclusive to a console that the original game didn't release to. Final Fantasy VII Remake is a PS4 exclusive, therefore PS4 owners expected any additional content to come to the PS4, and I think they have every right to be annoyed at Square for making this tone-deaf decision. So needless to say, I had a bit of skepticism towards this, but when it had come out a couple months back, it got surprisingly good reviews, with IGN giving it an 8 out of 10 and GameSpot giving it a 7 out of 10. So yeah, let's see how episode Intermission holds up compared to the base game and as a piece of original content. Spoiler alert, I didn't exactly love this. Episode Intermission features 2 new chapters that take place during the time Cloud is off with Aerith. It stars Yuffie, an adolescent ninja working for the Wutai clan, who travels over to Midgar's Sector 7 slums to meet up with her partner Sonon, in order to infiltrate Shinra's headquarters to steal their ultimate materia. And that's basically the story and what you get throughout the 2 chapters. You'll start off in the slums, which you should be familiar with by now, and this is where you'll be able to partake in side content, such as the newest edition of Fort Condor, a poster hunting minigame, and that's it. Continuing on with the main quest will lead you to a chase scene in an industrial scrap area, a boss fight with a centipede looking thing, and then quickly transporting you to Shinra's HQ to end with Chapter 2. It's pretty short so far, with a few reused locations and some uninspired level design, but thankfully, Yuffie feels great to control.
He's here.
Her playstyle is unique compared to any other character. She has a mixture of melee attacks with her signature shuriken and ranged abilities with her materia-based magic. You can change what type of magic to attack with on the fly with a press of the D-pad, and you're even able to throw her shuriken attaching it to an enemy. Performing the same attack will now launch Yuffie to the same enemy that has the unfortunate situation of having a shuriken stuck in them. The combination of ranged and melee focused combat, mixed with some welcomed verticality, really makes Yuffie stand out from other characters' playstyles. Sonon will accompany you for most of the campaign, and while he cannot be controlled individually, he can be used to synergize his attacks with Yuffie's, allowing you to constantly have Sonon attacking the enemy you want and also buffing their ATB abilities, given they both have the required build-up. It's a nice addition and better than only being able to control the one character, but the ability to change characters whenever you want like the base game is still superior to this system. Overall, the combat here does not disappoint. If you enjoy what Cloud, Aerith and the rest of the gang had to offer, you'll surely enjoy this. It's just a shame that this feels like you don't get enough time and combat encounters to really sink your teeth into Yuffie's kit, and to learn all of her intricacies, as well as her interactions with Sonon. As for additional changes to exploration or puzzles, there is one noticeable difference. Yuffie can throw her shuriken, so you can now expect environmental hazards to be built around that. But they're wasted potential, as whenever you encounter one of these, there's a huge blue arrow pointing out what to do. And even if that wasn't the case, they never get any more complex than hitting something and walking over to it, or hitting a switch and climbing onto the now moved platform. I can handle shit platforming because the base game had that. I can also handle shit environmental puzzles because the base game also had that. But something that the base game had was a meaningful and impactful story, as well as fully developed characters. The story here is unfortunately a complete waste of time and feels completely inconsequential to the overall Final Fantasy VII narrative. Minus the introduction of Yuffie, but considering how dull this DLC is, perhaps Square would have been better off to wait until Remake Part 2 to introduce her. But then again, they wouldn't have made a lot of money off this overpriced and undercooked DLC. I don't dislike Yuffie, but she is in the same league as Jessie for me. She can have her funny and entertaining moments, but in the end I could tell you almost nothing about her as she fades into the back of my memory. On the side of animation, this is something I very rarely bring up, as I understand lip sync takes a long time, and I don't usually mind bad lip sync, but holy crap, this is unacceptable at times, with characters' mouths either being completely off or having an abundance of camera movement to hide the dialogue.
Well, 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 look what the tide washed in. That's a 1-2.
This isn't a long DLC, and there aren't a lot of characters or conversations. I don't understand how little care can be put into something like this. However, to end on a positive note, there is a great after credit scene that I will not spoil. So if you haven't played this DLC yet, I would recommend just searching it on YouTube as you wait for part 2. Episode Intermission offers up 2 chapters, or episodes, and takes about 4 to 5 hours to complete if you're doing all of the side content. However, if you were to beeline the campaign, it would be around the 3-hour mark, and even that feels grossly over-bloated. This DLC offers up maybe 1.5 hours of fresh original content. Now, what do I mean by that? There's just so much fat in this DLC that could either have been trimmed down or removed entirely, but obviously wasn't due to the already short length of these 2 episodes. Firstly, you have Fort Condor, which is padding, but it's the good type of padding. It feels like it got the development time it needed to be a worthy addition alongside the main content. But then you have the side mission where you're looking for posters. It just has you running around the slums looking for these turtle posters. That's it, it's that basic. There's no platforming required, there's no combat before or after finding one of these, and there's no big boss fight at the end. There's nothing. It's just, find these posters and give them back to me. And they're not even scattered around a new location. They're in the slums, which is a sector you've already explored many times over. More egregiously though is the horde style fights that happen in a few different areas, but I want to focus on one towards the end of episode 2. You'll get on this platform that will cut you from exhibition to exhibition 5 times. And each time you'll face a regular tough enemy, or a few simple mobs. What makes this blatantly stale and mundane is that the trips between the 5 different battle arenas almost take as long as the actual fights. This section with the same platform copy and pasted 5 times takes over 10 minutes to complete, and it offers nothing interesting or unique to this DLC. I know it sounds like I'm being super harsh right now, but I've left the perfect example for last. At one point there's a conveyor belt you'll need to activate and then stand on as it slowly pulls you to your next location. Mind you, you cannot control the speed of this at all. It is at a fixed pace, and all you can do during this 2.5 minute ride is throw Yuffie's boomerang at boxes. Now tell me, is this why you play Final Fantasy? Is this what you imagine doing after you slapped $30 down to play new Final Fantasy VII content? Because it certainly isn't what I had in mind. This has been a pretty negative review of episode Intermission, and I felt really weird having this negative of opinion related to something Final Fantasy VII Remake, since I thought the base game was just fantastic. So as soon as I finished the DLC, I replayed through the first 2 chapters with Cloud and the rest of the gang, and yep, that content still slaps. I still got a lot of enjoyment out of those chapters. The combat was still entertaining and flashy, the characters were still engaging and charismatic, the levels felt lived in and cluttered unlike much of Yuffie's areas, and the spectacle was still amazing as ever with the Scorpion boss and the introduction of Sephiroth. So for anyone wondering, it's not me disliking Final Fantasy VII Remake, it's just the DLC that underwhelmed me with a lack of interesting characters, a campaign that is spread way too thin with the unnecessary padding of repetitive and tedious side content, and overall a scarcity of creative vision. If you have a PlayStation 5, or when you get a PS5, I would recommend not paying for this content separately. Only play it if you get the PS5 Integrated Edition of FF7 Remake, as $30 for this feels like a major cash grab. The last thing I have to say before I finish up is what makes a great piece of DLC or an expansion worth it is when you go to replay the game, you spend that extra time to go through the additional content again. This is true for games like The Witcher 3 with Blood and Wine, Bloodborne's Old Hunter expansion, The Last of Us Left Behind, and Dark Souls' Artorias of the Abyss DLC, just to name a few. All these games have DLC that matches or exceeds the original quality and makes the overall package more impressive with their inclusion. Sadly, however, Final Fantasy VII Remake would have been better left standing by itself rather than tacking on episode intermission.